Welcome to the Toy Box Podcast, guys. I am your host, Brett, once again. And today we got two special guests. We got Tristan once again, Movie Reviews 100. Say hey.
Hey.
And we've also got Robert, aka Future Spielberg on Instagram. Say hey.
Hello.
And today we are going to be reviewing some movies in our review corner. And so, number one, let's talk about Green Book. So Green Book is the newest film by Peter Farrelly, and it's about racism. What do you guys think about it?
Great explanation. I like that.
Yeah, thank you. So personally, for this movie, I thought it was pretty good. I don't think it's like the best movie of the year or something that should even deserve a Best Picture nomination, but I definitely thought it was a solid, well-made enough drama. And both performances really shined, in my opinion. So I would recommend it. What about you guys?
I'll go first. I thought that Green Book was a really, really pleasant movie. I got to see it. While my family was Black Friday shopping, so it was like after Thanksgiving. And one, it really got me in the Christmas mood, surprisingly. But two, it was just a really nice movie to see around that time because, like, it's a crowd pleaser, but it doesn't sacrifice being a good movie to be a crowd pleaser. It doesn't only have, like, the crowd pleasing thing in mind, which I really enjoyed. I think that, Brett, your claim about it not really being a Best Picture nominee worthy movie, I would agree with that. But I would also say that there are a lot of other movies that aren't Best Picture nominee worthy that are going to get nominated. And of all of them, I think Green Book is one of the most worthy. I think it has its problems, and I don't think that it's very memorable, but it's like a movie that it's hard to not like. I'm going to be watching it a lot, like, randomly on TV and stuff, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I gotta disagree with both of you guys. I think it definitely is a Oscar-worthy movie. I don't think it's worthy of like being a front runner, and I think it's kind of crazy that it's in the conversation to potentially win. But they have to pick 9 movies each year, and I'd definitely throw it in that 8th or 9th spot. And I think it's just an overall really well crafted and really well made drama that just features 2 of the best performances of the year. Both Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen are like incredible, but Viggo, like, I think he might deliver his best work to date here, and like he was pretty great in Captain Fantastic and Lord of the Rings and the Constant Gardener, but like he's just phenomenal here, and he's given a role that could have easily been a stereotype or something that's even borderline offensive, but I thought he brought a lot of humanity to the role, and he just, like, I don't know, he's just really charismatic and fun to watch on screen, and he really draws the audience in, and I feel a great deal of why that movie worked so well was him and his chemistry with Mahershala Ali, and I feel like the movie had a lot more depth than I was, like, expecting. It actually explored some issues and some, like, maybe it didn't happen in real life, and I know, like, it's definitely an exaggerated version of the story, but I feel like they really hit a few really important points that explored racism and race relations in a way that I guess it hasn't really been explored before or hasn't really done often. Like that whole subplot about Mahershala Ali's character not feeling like he doesn't feel like an African American, but he also doesn't feel white, and he doesn't know where he belongs. And I found that part really compelling. Like, overall, I just really love the movie.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. I just thought it was definitely safe and crowd pleasing, but all at the same time, I don't think that's actually really even an issue. I think people get very up in arms about a movie not reinventing the wheel, but if you do what you do well and you engage an audience, then I don't think that should even matter. So but there's certainly
Yeah.
I think a lot to admire.
Something I'd like to add. I feel like the movie, for being what it is, it easily could have slipped into the, like I was saying earlier, with the fact that it's not it's not I forgot what I said. I forgot what my point was. But I feel like one of the smartest things in the movie that kind of made it a bit better than just being a crowd pleaser was the way that they handled racism. For the reason that Tristan said, the reason that he was the issue with Mahershala Ali's character feeling like he's not white enough, not black enough. But another one of the big things was that they established early on that Viggo Mortensen's character is a racist guy, but during the actual trip, like starting out, it's not like he's just constantly at odds with him. He's at odds with him for other reasons, but it's not race related.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
a lot of the stuff, like when they have to go into the town and what the policeman says to Viggo Mortensen's character that causes them to get into jail, where he insults his Italian ethnicity. It was like they brought that in too, and it wasn't all about. It wasn't like a purely white and a purely African American guy, so there wasn't that complete polarity. They were still able to relate to each other, and I like the way that it wasn't a poor African American guy and a rich white guy. It was a rich African American guy and a poor Italian guy. They also switched
I thought that
and I
was
feel
super
like
compelling.
the way
I
they
agree.
handled it wasn't entirely new, but it was different enough to be memorable and to be, something worth watching.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought something that was super interesting about it was again the angle that Marshall Ali was super rich yet didn't have rights, right? And Viggo Mortensen had rights but wasn't rich, so they both had things the other one didn't. Like I thought that was actually a super interesting idea to approach like that with. I thought that was cool. Um, and I agree with most all of that. I've heard a lot of people say that it goes in the white guilt because it's like, oh, this white guy's not as bad as he could have been, but he's still racist. And I think that's a really dumb argument because the movie
yeah,
also shows Lip as someone who is bigoted and doesn't actually shine like any light to his bigotry. Like at the beginning, whenever the two guys are like drinking the lemonade and he like takes the towel and throws them out or whatever, like there's like stuff
yeah,
like that shows it's not overbrushing that mentality of him, but it's showing like the fact that he has just a lot of growing to do. Like Marshall Ali isn't the one who learns in this movie. Marshall Ali doesn't need to learn. It's the people around him that need to learn. So
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, Mahershala Ali doesn't learn per se, but he grows in a way.
Yeah.
And I found the way that his character grows to be really interesting. And I don't know, I just thought they tackled that angle in a way that I haven't really seen in this type of movie before. Like the filmmaking for sure is your standard drama that you would have seen 10 years ago. But at the same time, like some of the beats that they hit in here are totally different from what we've seen. And I feel like, I don't know, it's got a lot more to it than originally than what you see on the surface. Like it's a pretty heavy movie overall, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so what would you give it out of 10? Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Hey. Okay.
So should I go or do you?
We're gonna score it out of 10 and then go to the next movie.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So what would you give it out of 10, Tristan?
I'll go with an 8.5. I thought it was really good.
All right. I want to go with a 7.
Oof.
What about you, Robert?
I give it a 7.75.
That's gonna make my number really hard to calculate. Oh, let me do this again. 23.
Yeah, it's probably somewhere in my top 15 right now.
I think the more that time passes, the more I think about it, the higher and higher up it goes on my list.
Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed it overall. It's not the greatest movie of the year, and I don't think it should win Best Picture, but I think it's just an overall really well acted and just just a really nice movie to watch.
I'm gonna say our average is a 7.5, but in the bio I'll edit it if I was wrong.
Okay.
So next off, we're gonna do Roma. So Roma is a beautiful period piece created by Alfonso Cuarón, maybe the best director working today, about the life
Whoa,
of
bold
Cleo,
statement, dude.
about the life of
Wow.
Cleo, a maid who works for this family, and that's pretty much all you need to know. And I am absolutely in love with this movie. I do not only think it is the best movie of 2018. No, I didn't say favorite, but I said best. I think it is an achievement unlike any other I've ever seen. I might put it along the lines of There Will Be Blood or Psycho. As in, this movie is towering, it's epic, it's bold. I mean, I think there's stuff that Alfonso Cuarón does with the camera here that I didn't even know was even possible. He captures every single detail. He makes this Mexico City that should look burned down and gross, and he turns into something that's super wide and beautiful. And I thought, honestly, that this was going to be a movie that I kind of just watched and appreciated for how beautiful it looked up until towards the last 30 minutes. And there's a scene where it takes place in a hospital, and I was watching it on Netflix in my living room, and I broke down. And it made me realize that I had actually invested so much in these characters, and I hadn't even realized it. And I think once that moment hit, I knew, my word, this movie was a powerhouse. I really want to see it again because I think it could shoot up even higher on my list, but I'll say this is easily one of my favorite movies of the year, and I loved it so, so much. What are your thoughts?
Should I go first, or do you want to go first,
Yeah.
Robert?
You should go so that we have super positive, mild, super positive.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll explain myself. No, I really like this movie a lot, and I think in terms of quality, it's probably up there with some of the best of the year. Um, would I consider it one of my favorites? Probably not. And I don't know why. I probably should watch it again. I did recently, and because I watched this initially at TIFF, and I kind of dozed off a couple times, and that probably, I don't know, that definitely didn't give me the full experience. So I watched it again, and I appreciated it even more, but my enjoyment of the movie didn't really increase in any way. Like, I think this is a gorgeous movie, and I think what Alfonso Cuarón is able to do in terms of world building is pretty incredible. And he's able to establish this time and place and setting that feels so fully realized and feels like you're not only watching a movie, but you're actually experiencing it and you're in the world. And the fact that he's able to do that with not a fantasy world, but a real place like Mexico City, I think is pretty incredible. It's like, I don't want to say it's time travel, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, he makes you feel like you're in that time and in that place and in these characters' shoes. And I feel like that's this film's greatest achievement. It really establishes a time and a place, and Quran is able to like put some of the best visuals of not only the year, maybe the decade on screen and really capture this world. And Cleo, like, is definitely one of the most compelling characters of the year for sure. Cleo's like such a great character. But for me, I don't know. I felt like the movie had, and I love movies with kind of like loose narratives where it's like a slice of life type movie. But for this one, I felt like it was covering so much ground in 2.5 hours. It's still a big movie, but this movie is massive, and it's an intimate film, but it's covering all these different like real events and context that happened in Mexico City. And I just felt it was like a little hard to grasp personally because while I felt connected to this main character, there were so many things going on that while I really admired the world that he built and the the characters and the visuals, I felt a little bit emotionally detached in a way, and I feel like that could definitely change on rewatch. Like, I'm gonna try and watch it a third time and see if it changes. This is like the type of movie where you really have to be in the mood while watching it. But yeah, I think it's a brilliant movie, and I think it's really well made. Just for me personally, I can't call it one of my favorites.
All right, how about you, Robert?
All right. I think it's my turn. I'm just going to warn you guys now. My phone is at 9%, and I don't have access to a charger, so if I'm randomly gone, just know that's why. But, Roma, I actually skipped school to watch this movie a little bit. I went home in the middle of the day because I knew I wouldn't be able to that night. So I kind of snuck home and watched this movie. And it was like towards the end of finals, and it was in the middle of a show. So I was stressed out like crazy. And this was like exactly the movie that I needed at that moment. I think that Roma, I think the best way to capture my feelings is to watch my review on the Clever Critic, the YouTube channel.
I actually have you
I'm
in
not
my.
trying to plug that in an annoying way. Like, genuinely, like, those are the best way to frame
I
it.
actually have you on my
I recorded
recommended
that right
channels.
after I watched that movie, and I
Yeah.
was just stunned. I think Roma is one of the movies that 20 years from now people will hail as one of the best movies of all time. I think that it is up there with like Citizen Kane and The Godfather and 8.5 and Stalker. I think it's like one of those movies, and I feel like, I don't know. I just think that it's the type of movie that people see and it changes their life and it changes their perspective on the world, because that's exactly what it did for me. Because, like people have said already, the way that he captures Mexico City so beautifully, it makes you look at life differently. It will make you stare at like a coffee table in your living room and think it's the most beautiful thing ever. Because the way that he's able to capture simple life moments and make them look like paintings, it makes you think about how beautiful life is. But I think that Roma's biggest achievement, and something so masterful that it does that I haven't seen other movies do, is that it comes to you. You aren't teleported into it. The movie comes to you. And I think that that's achieved by the fact that Alfonso does not, um, he doesn't show the character's emotions in ways that most movies do. There's no scene where characters explain their emotions. There is no scene where characters explain their backstories. It's one of the like fewest use of exposition I've ever seen in a movie, because it's all in the moment. And what it does is that it feels isolated because you don't know these people. You don't know who they are. You don't know their personality traits. And you think that that would be an issue, but it helps you feel the light isolation that they feel, living their lives where men have ruined it, and it's women that are stuck by themselves. And like Brett said, when that scene comes and the scenes that follow after it, you realize how attached you are to them because you feel the isolation too. And a lot of people feel that kind of isolation in their life, no matter where they are. So, Quran simultaneously created a universal message that can be used, a movie that lives in the moment, and a movie that brings you to characters way more than most movies ever could dream of doing. And it led to such an emotional burst that just really, it relieves your stress, at the same time it heightens your stress, and it just brings you into a state of being that's like only the greatest movies ever have done for me. Only movies like, my favorite of all time, The Graduate. I got that from that movie. And I didn't think that I'd get that from a modern day movie. And I got that from Roma because it's just so masterfully done. And it easily could have slipped into pretentious dribble, but it never did, because this was Karan's personal experience. And this was, the story of what he believed was his sister. He saw Cleo as his sister. and you feel the feelings that he does by living in the moment and not having characters explain it to you. And it was such a powerful experience. I can talk about this movie for hours, but that's just the one big point I wanted to get across. That's exactly why I love Roma. I give it a 9.75, and the reason for the missing 0.25 is because um the personal connection, like, it wasn't as deep as a 10 would be, but that's like the only reason. It was still masterful.
I'll give it a 9.
All right. I will give it a 9.3, so definitely go see this one. The next movie we are going to be talking about is. Crap, what was it? The next movie we're going to be talking about is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So this is the newest from Sony Animation, the same people who brought us the amazing Emoji Movie. And now they sent us a real clunker called Spider-Verse. This movie is about a bunch of spider people in a spider universe. And that's all I gotta say. It's pretty great. Anyways, so if I go into this movie, I think Into the Spider-Verse, this and Won't You Be My Neighbor right now are in a duel for my number one of the year. And I think, don't be surprised if this is what ends up being my favorite movie of the year. I've been an avid comic book reader since I've been very little, and so I've had an attachment to superhero movies because of that reason. But a lot of superhero movies just kind of feel like your blockbusters, kind of like your Fast and Furious, but with more substance. I like the Marvel movies. I think they're fun. The Guardians ones are way above the rest of them, but like they're all good. But I think what Into the Spider-Verse does so well is that it captures the feeling you get when you read a comic book on the big screen better than any other film ever has. I think it's the same type of euphoria that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World has, which is one of my favorite movies. There is so much fun to be had in this movie. I mean, it is just a blast from scene one. It's super entertaining, but they do so many weird, absurd things you would never think about tackling in a movie like 10 years ago. Like, there's a spider pig in this, and yet they sell every single moment. But not only is this movie just visually one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a movie theater, and not only did I have a grin on my face the entire time, but I thought it was a really compelling coming of age movie with Miles figuring out that he's not the only Spider-Man, but yet Spider-Man's kind of in all of us, which sounds really corny when I say it, but it's a really interesting and neat idea to approach this with. And there was real, genuine, emotional moments with him and his dad. And I mean, it was one of those movies that whenever the credits rolled, I was floored. And I mean, I saw this and Roma like the same weekend, and I was just like, man, movies are so good. And I just absolutely love this movie. I think besides the first Guardians of the Galaxy, this is my second favorite superhero movie of all time at this point. I think it's literally a perfect movie. I don't see any fault in it whatsoever. I love this movie. What about you, Tristan?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a huge Spider-Man fan as well. Actually, the first movie I ever saw in theaters was the first Spider-Man, 2002, showing my age there. But yeah, I've had an attachment to the character ever since, and more so than I have with any other superhero. Like, I don't really, well, I do really like the Marvel movies, as you said. I just don't have that same attachment to them as Spider-Man, and I feel like with Spider-Man, there's a bit more weight there, and it's kind of like one of those stories that, well, it's not just a form of escapism, it's also like a story that people can relate to, because as Stan Lee has said before, um, Spider-Man's a character that everyone can identify with, and I feel like that's kind of what Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse does best. We've heard the story of Peter Parker. We've seen it done so many times, and while the first Spider-Man is one of my favorite movies of all time, I thought this one was just a great change of pace. We don't only see Peter Parker, but we see a very different Peter Parker than we have ever before. Someone who's struggling, someone who's going through everyday problems. and we also get to see Miles Morales in his first on-screen appearance. And what I loved most about this movie is no matter what your gender is or what your race is or how old you are, you're going to see yourself represented in this movie. There is, Spider-Woman, Miles Morales, Peter Parker, and they each have their own specific identity and personality, and all of them are so fully realized, and I just feel like these characters you can all really identify with. The movie just has a lot more weight and depth than I ever could have expected it to have. And not only that, but it's one of the most visually unique and innovative movies to come out in a really long time. I do have a couple flaws with the villain and the third act and some of the plot points that it takes. I think it's a perfect movie, but I really do think that it is one of the most innovative and imaginative and fun films to come out this year, and it's definitely an achievement in animation.
Nice. What about you, Robert? What do you think?
Well, okay. Everyone got so hyped up about this movie, and it's like the 6th highest rated movie ever on Letterboxd right now.
It should be number 1,
and
but
like people are freaking out about it, and like, okay, I think that this movie is really good. I think that the animation is incredible, and absolutely Sony should patent it. I think the story is really original and fresh. I think that the movie is funny, and above all, honestly, the best word to use for the movie is fresh, because it feels new, it feels entertaining, it feels fun. But I'm just not getting the thing that everyone else is getting about this movie, because everyone's calling it like a complete masterpiece, and they say that it's like, a true representation of what a comic book feels like. And I don't know. I think that this movie's good. I just don't think that it's like masterpiece level, like everybody says it is, because I honestly didn't feel too wrapped up in the world. And honestly, I don't think that I saw myself in any of the Spider People. And that's what everyone's saying about this movie. No matter who you are, you'll be able to relate to a spider person in the movie. And I could not for a single one of them. And I honestly feel like that made me a bit detached. Like, the difference between a masterpiece and a normal movie is that a masterpiece can make you not notice that you're sitting in a chair or that there's walls around you. And I was very conscious that I was sitting in a chair and that there were walls around me throughout the entirety of Spider-Verse. I don't think that it's like a bad movie at all. I think it's really good. I would score it really high. It's original and fresh and everything, but I just don't think masterpiece, personally.
Well, you've heard it here, guys. Robert is dead inside. But what do you guys think?
Roma's better, just saying.
I mean, they're both so good, though. What would you guys give it?
I actually... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What score would you guys give it out of 10?
I'll go first. I would give it an 8. I think it's really good, and I want to see it again, and I want to see it a few more times. It's super entertaining. It's just nothing more than entertaining.
What about you, Tristan?
Okay, I'm actually going to backtrack a bit. I went a little crazy and said Roma was a 9. I'd give that an 8.5 and this an 8.75.
Okay.
Sorry, Robert. Don't hate me.
Wow.
Sorry.
How am I going to edit this?
I don't know. I just ruined your video. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And you guys know, are you guys ready for this? Drum roll.
He's going to give it a 10.
Yeah, it's a 10. It's a 10. I can't even fault anything for it. Maybe that's just like I have goggles on because I just love it so much. But like, yes, I love Spider-Verse. It's perfect. I could watch it probably on repeat for the rest of my life and be a perfectly happy person. So there you go. And okay, so the last movie we're going to be talking about today is Beautiful Boy. This is directed by a director that has a really long name, but I know it starts with Felix.
Felix von Grogan Gagan.
Thank
I
you.
think. Something like that.
This is the story. It stars Timothée Chalamet, and this is based off memoirs by Nick and David Sheff, and pretty much this father had to watch his son kind of get into really heavy and hard drugs and become addicted to them. And this is kind of his story of trying to get off of drugs and become a better person and relapsing again. And it's a tough chronicles, tough times. Man, all my descriptions for these movies have been wonderful. I just need to get up the IMDb plot points, I guess. Anyway,
My favorite was Spider-Verse because you said it's a movie and there's a lot of spider people and it's great.
yeah. So Beautiful Boy was a movie that I was super hyped up for. I mean, super hyped up for. And then the TIFF reactions came out and they were very mixed. And my anticipation for it dropped quite a bit because of that. I tried to not have reviews have that sort of impact, but they just do sometimes. Because I was like, oh, this isn't going to be the Oscar movie that I thought it was going to be. And then I saw it, and I was really confused how anyone could be mixed on this movie. I'm just going to sound super positive about everything but Green Book in this review, apparently. But, like, Beautiful Boy was amazing in my opinion, and I know a lot of people are not responding to it the way I am. But whenever I saw this in theater, the very last scene, I bawled, and it's been a very very long time since a movie actually just broke me down like that. Robert had mentioned in his Spider Verse review how he forgot there was walls around him if it's a masterpiece. I totally forgot I was watching a movie while watching this movie, which is weird because this movie is such a movie. This movie slows down. It has music all over it. It is probably in every which way emotionally manipulative as a movie could be, and yet it worked for me. I mean, that's all I can say is that I was invested in every single scene. I thought Timothy Chalamet gives easily probably my favorite performance of anyone this year. I thought he was so vulnerable, and I mean, of course, this guy he showed us in Call Me by Your Name that he's super talented, but I liked this role even more that he did. I thought he was just such a powerhouse, and I thought Steve Carell did an excellent job as well. I mean, of course, this is Timothy's movie, but I thought Steve Carell did a wonderful job with what he was given as well. And I thought this entire thing just worked. Again, it moved me. I loved the soundtrack. I loved the locations. This movie sucked me into these characters' heads, and I said this in my letterbox review, but Steve Carell's character in this movie looks just like my dad. I mean, just like my dad. And seeing him break down this movie almost made me feel like, in a way, I was disappointing my own dad when I watched it. Therefore, at the very end of the movie, I just immediately had to call him. I mean, it had that sort of impact on me, and it made me think about a lot of things. And so that's why film is subjective. Like I've heard people's complaints about this movie, and I completely understand them. Like this movie is as emotionally manipulative as you can get. But what I've always said is that movies that are emotionally manipulative, every single movie you ever see tries to manipulate you in some way, and it's rather it succeeds or it doesn't succeed. And so I always use these two movies as examples. Forrest Gump succeeds for me. I always get lost in that movie. I always find something profound in that movie. I mean, I love that movie. But Titanic, every time I watch it, I'm like, gag. And I think that's just the thing. Like, people can respond to both of them. People cannot respond to them because they definitely have heightened senses of reality. And it's rather you get lost in them or not. And that's just your own personal experiences and baggage being put onto the movie itself. And for me, Beautiful Boy was just perfect for me. And I loved it. I thought it was great. So those are my thoughts. Who'd like to go next?
Can I go next because my phone's about to die?
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
Okay. I think the best thing that a movie can do is enlighten you and educate you. I think that's the best thing a movie can do. And I don't think Beautiful Boy quite enlightened me, but this movie absolutely educated me on what drug addiction is because my entire life, I had known drug addiction as a crime. But what Beautiful Boy does is that it views it as a mental illness, which personally is the way I believe it should be shown. And I love how this movie tackled it because it it showed how much Steve Carell had to go through and how many hours he spent crying and sobbing for the son that he loves that he has to see go through this, and he has to realize that it's not his son's choice that he's going through this, and it's not entirely fixable without years and years of constant work and constant support. And it's not for the faint of heart. It's really hard to love somebody who struggles so much, and help isn't, one, readily available to them, and two, perfect. Like, you can't perfectly help someone. You can't be a savior. And this movie, it didn't end with a big scene with Steve Carell giving a lecture to his son. It ended with him being there with his son, because that's all you can do. You can just be there for someone in situations like that. And thankfully, Beautiful Boy taught me that. And I'm really, really appreciative that a movie this year could speak that much power to me. And when a movie speaks that much power to you, clearly it's doing something right. I think this movie has a plethora of other issues. I think that the structure is really poor. I feel like the movie does not flow well. I don't think that this is a perfect movie by any means, but it's competent enough, and the performances carry it enough, and the message and the theme, while not expressed as well as I think that they could have been, I still think that they were there, and I still think they were powerful. And I really enjoyed Beautiful Boy.
All right. What about your thoughts, Tristan?
Yeah, so I went into this movie with extremely high expectations. Beautiful Boy is pretty much the definition of my type of movie. I just love these types of coming of age, slice of life dramas, and I I was like really really exciting for this movie. And when I was initially watching it, I was really disappointed by it because of the structure and because of I thought there were points where it was emotionally manipulative and where it really didn't work and it felt jumbled. But thinking back on it, the movie has really grown on me in time. And while I don't think this is a perfect film, I think in terms of a like in terms of telling a story and in terms of teaching people about drug addiction and what it can do to people and how people deal with it. I feel like this film really accomplishes what it's going after, and it does it in such a bleak and emotional way that I don't think any other film I've seen does in this specific way. Like it's really bleak, and it really is an up close look at someone struggling and how it affects everyone around them. And the fact of the matter is, when you have a drug addiction, it's not entirely in your hands. And this film shows that. It shows that it doesn't matter how much support you have. It's an ongoing struggle, and you have to take it day by day. And it's really hard to watch. And I feel like anyone who's faced drug addiction before, or any sort of addiction, or knows anyone who has gone through this, is really going to get something out of this movie. It's really authentic and incredibly well acted. As a film, I don't think it works perfectly. Like, I do think that the structure is a bit all over the place. I think the editing is really poor, and I just don't think it comes together as a cohesive whole. But I think there's a lot to admire in this movie for me to be able to call it a really, really solid film that I feel like everyone should watch.
All right. So what do you guys give it out of 10?
I'll go first because my phone's about to die. Beautiful Boy, very conflicted movie with me, and I've already gave this rating before, and it's super specific, but I'm going to give it again. A 7.75 really represents my feelings for this movie because it's ripe. It's almost to an 8. And it probably deserves an 8 more than Spider-Verse. But I think that it's just too problematic as a film. But as an emotional experience and as an educational piece, it really works.
How dare you be hating on Spider-Verse? How about you, Tristan?
Just being honest.
How about you? Oh, sorry.
I'll go with an 8.25. I don't think it's quite as good as Ben is Back, but it's definitely got a lot to it, and it's definitely one of the most emotionally draining movies of the year.
You guys are going to make
Tristan,
math so hard.
Sorry to interrupt, and this is a random question, but I have to ask. Do the trailers to Ben is Back completely mislead on what the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the trailers to Ben is Back, I remember watching that on Rabbit with Film Buff, and I'm like, dude, I can't wait for you to watch the trailer. And I watch it, and I was laughing throughout the entire thing. It's so bad.
Okay, good. Thank you.
No, the movie's great. The first half, I think everyone agrees that it's amazing. A lot of people are mixed on the second half because it turns into something completely different. It just depends on whether you go with it. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
I'm going to give Beautiful Boy a 9. I know I'm just being really positive, but like I love that movie, and it's also one that's easily like it's on my 10 of the year right now. It depends if it keeps in or gets knocked out with other movies I go see. But I'm pretty sure it's going to make it in. Like, I love this movie. It really deeply resonated with me. And that's going to be all for today, guys. Thank you so much for being on. So all of our score averages are going to be down in the bio below. And not only that, links so you can go to Robert's page and Tristan's page. Go check them out. And thank you guys so much for watching today. Say bye.
All right,
Bye.
thanks for having me, Brett. Bye.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that we can make this work.
Yeah, after like 4 hours of technical difficulties.
Yep. See you.